Hi, as I promised earlier, I'm going to give you a couple more examples of social justice interventions. I gave you some earlier in the class. I'll give you some more today to help you get more of a sense of different approaches you could take for a final project if you wanted to go the intervention route for your final project. Whichever route you go, whether you go the critical cultural route or the social intervention route, it's important that you get on this right now because it will take some time to be able to do any of these types of projects. So this first one I'll talk about is preventing bullying in schools. And this project was done with a school in Missouri, University of Missouri, with middle schools in Missouri. So for background information, 77% of children have been bullied mentally, verbally, or physically. There are long-term effects that come with bullying. Those effects, limit academic achievement, well-being, emotional stability, physical stability, and social health. Physical health and social health. There's fairly substantial impact that bullying can have on individuals, especially students. It can also result in violent retaliations towards others or self. Right, so we see these kind of large-scale school shooting incidences. We see fights in schools. We see a lot of that type of stuff where students finally say, "Well, I'm just not going to put up with this anymore," and they'll retaliate. We also see instances where students have hurt themselves, committed suicide, and or just physical injuries like cutting and those types of things to kind of, in a sense, get back at the perpetrator from a sense of a victim standpoint. Now, there's very little research on effectiveness of anti-bullying programs in schools. Lots of programs kind of put these things together. Some teachers get together in an afternoon, or they look at what are other schools doing, and they throw flyers up, and they and they have assemblies where they'll say, it's really important not to bully, or they'll show after school programs or something, in a sense, but there's nothing that that really focuses on actually researching to see if their programs work. So what is this intervention plan? Graduate students in communication courses partnered with a local middle school. They applied course content and intervention-oriented communication research to address the issue of bullying, right? So specific course content, which is what we're talking about in our class, right? And intervention-oriented communication research to address the issue of bullying. And one of the goals was to learn how to conduct primary research. So 2 courses really went into this. So it's a year-long program with 2 different courses. The first course was a survey methods course. So students talked about different types of research, always directed with the question of how could you implement that concept, that research, into an anti-bullying project, whether it be quantitative survey-based research or whether it be more in-depth interviewing. From a qualitative standpoint, how can you implement it to focus specifically on that project? How can it work with regards to that project? And then the students conducted empirical research to determine the extent of bullying at the school, to get a sense of how often, how much students are being bullied and what kind of bullying is happening, to get a sense of what is the extent of bullying in total in the specific school. And the final project, the final kind of how they put this together was they created a formal presentation to present to the middle school principal, which would provide him with data to be able to present to higher level administrators because he had a strong sense that bullying was a big problem, but he had no data, in fact, to back that up, to be able to present to the administrators, say, we need some help to be able to deal with this major issue. So the students did the research, were able to put that research together in a formalized presentation, a formalized document, being able to then present that data to the principal, who could then take it further on to be able to get more help to establish anti-bullying programs at his school. The second part was a small group course. And the small group course, the students developed three 45-minute interventions to share the research with students and to teach those students verbal strategies. So the first 45-minute session was just a discussion of findings where they got the students together and they talked about this is what people say in your school. So they say, this many percentage of people have been bullied. These are the types of bullying that happens. This is where it happens. So getting all the same thing that they presented to the principal, they then present to the students and actually have the students talk, have a full discussion about the information. Like, did they find it true? What was their response to it? Have a discussion amongst the students. The second section was a qualitative data collection, where they got some students together in focus groups. They got students together and they did in-depth interviews. So a qualitative method of getting to a deeper understanding of the structure of bullying within the school. So, where the first one is, were you bullied? What kind of bullying were you in a sense of just asking questions to be able to get that kind of comprehensive quantitative data. The qualitative data collection process was to get a deeper understanding of the whole cycle and structure of bullying within the school. Then the next 45-minute session was constructed so that they could present strategies for dealing with bullying. So from the individual, are you a victim of bullying? Are you a bystander and seeing bullying happen? Or are you a perpetrator in bullying, and strategies you could use to avoid bullying? Now, what the research said was they said that most of the strategies really did focus on this notion of a bystander. If you're seeing bullying, what can you do to intervene? But also so that you don't make yourself then a target of the bullying. And with the way they did it was 3 to 4 grad students for 20 to 24 middle school students. So as you see that you could put together a project that you're working with a few other people to be able to reach a group of a larger group of individuals, but it doesn't have to be a huge group. Now the next one is a one done by faculty member and students at Portland State University. Portland, Oregon in general, the Pacific Northwest in general, is very focused on environmental issues. It's one of those regions that people come to visit specifically because of the beauty of the nature, with both the Cascade Mountain Range, which involves a lot of very large mountains that are actually volcanoes, with Mount St. Helens kind of being in the middle of that group. But lots of forested land, lots of natural land that's isolated specifically for with environmental protection, so it doesn't get clear cut. But the Pacific Northwest, the initial kind of commerce in the Pacific Northwest was fishing and logging. So in fact, there's still a significant amount of logging that is happening in the community. So you have the kind of always the battle between the environmentalist and the logging industry. So the Bear Knoll intervention was that there was going to be a tree sale, an acreage sale of 531 acres of old growth tree stands. This is basically hemlock. Hemlock's not the world's best wood to work with. It's not as kind of pliable as pine or as strong as oak. It's and it takes a long time to grow. So hemlock is not the world's greatest trees to have to be working with. The other issue is that there was the adjoining area to the Bear Knoll grove had already been clear cut, so that so you had this kind of big old growth area, and then the next to it was just kind of flattened because it had been clear cut by the logging industry. So with the Bear Knoll situation, the argument for the sale was already happening. It was already in process. So, and the U.S. Forest Service, which is really the logging, the U.S. The commerce area that works with U.S. logging, um, they're more interested in commercial interests than environmental interests in a lot of ways. They had made this argument that that area needed to be cut because the forest was infested with Indian paint fungus, which is, a fungus that gets in areas, especially areas with hemlock. Now, the intervention plan was then to have students get involved in this intervention to try to stop the sale of these growth, or the allowing to be able to clear cut this growth area. So the first thing the students did was they were put in. They went and they did the research. They did all of the background research on logging, Indian paint fungus, how it affects forests, and all that type of stuff. And through their research, they found that the Indian paint fungus is actually, the term of using it as infested, and that it's killing the forest, and that the forest needs to be cut down so you can eradicate this, this fungus. The students said that that was really, really outdated, and they had a lot of scientific evidence that, in fact, says Indian paint fungus is actually not a bad thing. It's not as, in the sense, you shouldn't think of it as like infested in the sense that it's killing the forest. That's really definitely outdated information. And I'll read what it says. The reasons stated here for wanting to, or rather needing to, cut late successional stands of western hemlock again reflect an outdated attitude that is no longer supported by biological or ecological sciences. This is an attitude that was once taken by foresters who looked at any and all disease, however endemic or natural, as being solely destructive to forest systems and in need of eradication. The Forest Service's language in the above statements directly reflects this outdated and unsound attitude. Older trees are infested with Indian paint fungus, which is causing severe decay losses. Mount Hood National Forest has taken the stand that successional forests dominated by western hemlock infected with Indian paint fungus need to be cut down because this disease is an infestation, and that disease in these forests is a problem. This attitude would not be further from the scientific and ecological truth. As we shall see, it runs contrary to everything currently in scientific literature and directly opposes the framework of ecological principles. So they made a really good argument to, in fact, say, hey, you know what, this position is just wrong. And then we're able to then draft letters and send letters out to a number of individuals, and we're able to get the sale stopped. Now, in another situation, it might be that these students would be going and speaking in front of a panel, talking to government agencies, right? You could imagine that this communication would happen in a public speaking type format. But often we're not, with our communication, it's not going to be spoken communication. A lot of times our communication is going to have to be either something we create maybe through video. It might be something we have to create in writing. But the idea is that we're using our abilities as communicators to be able to craft a persuasive argument that can help further our goals, right, in a sense. Now, if you think about this as a social justice issue, right, we're talking about the environment and the importance of the environment, and how the environment is shared by all individuals. That in contrast to the capitalist goals of specific logging companies. In a sense of saying those logging companies want to go and cut down that forest, use those resources for their own personal gain at the expense of everyone else, including all the animals that rely on forest for their life, for their existence. So you want to think about it in that sense, like, right, we can stretch the bounds of what we consider to be social justice, and understand the importance of all, of being able to identify who may be affected by a specific situation or what may be affected by a specific situation, to be able to make an argument for why that's a social justice program. So hopefully this was helpful to you or informative. If you can take this with the earlier information I presented, I think you now have a pretty good understanding, a pretty good grasp of different types of ways that we can use communication to enact social justice programs. Thank you. Have a great day.